Hey, everybody. This is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 69 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. We've been training. Let me tell you why Well, my friends, it is piggyback time. It is time for us to piggyback from our most recent episode, our most recent interview with Chris Paynes. I got a ton of really good feedback from that episode. Just people that it was really unique for them to hear about conceptual training, conceptual teaching, and also we dug into some other things that weren't just conceptual things. Dug into how kind of to drill and to ask your partner if they feel something, why they don't, and in answering the why question in jiu-jitsu. It's just something we got to dig in on. I thought was really fun. So today, I thought it would be fun to piggyback off that episode and talk about technical training versus conceptual training, or technical teaching versus conceptual teaching. Before we dig into that, before we dig into anything else, as always, you guys should check out, if you have not, simplifyingjujitsu.com. If you are looking to train jiu-jitsu more efficiently and effectively, at simplifyingjujitsu.com, if you enter your email, I will send you a brand new, it's actually not new, it's been out for like 3 or 4 months, a free, and it is actually free, ebook. And that ebook is titled Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu. This is something that I wrote through my 12-year journey of jiu-jitsu, as I have learned to not just focus on all kinds of things, to be more specific, to get good at jiu-jitsu intentionally, get good at jiu-jitsu more efficiently and effectively than anyone else. I wouldn't say anyone else, but a lot of people. And just some of my secrets, my tips on how to do that. If you guys want to check that ebook out, I'll send it to you absolutely free if you go to simplifyingjujitsu.com and click on the free ebook. That is that's all we have to get out of the way before we jump into this episode. So the episode, the idea, the thought process. What is better, technical training or conceptual training? Before we get into which one is better, we first should define which each one is. Because some people that were newer, they probably think of training as training. And that's okay. Some people that are older may think of training as training, but the idea is this: a technique. We know what a technique is. We all know what a technique is. It is a move from a specific position. It is a specific move from a specific position. A concept is a move or thought that applies to multiple positions, or it applies to multiple moves from the same position. Examples: the elbow escape from mount. This is something that most of us have learned very early in jiu-jitsu, or the shrimp escape, the flat leg escape. There's a bunch of different types of this. There's a bunch of different styles, but the technique, the elbow escape, that is a technique. The idea of keeping your elbows tight when somebody has dominant position on you, whether they are in mount, whether they are in side control, whether they're in half guard, not letting them get those underhooks. That is a concept. Okay. So the technique is the elbow escape, where we put our elbow on their knee, we push, and we try to get back to half guard. We're in mount. Okay. So the idea of keeping our elbows in tight, which is what Chris Payne's talked about, keeping your elbows in, how to defend everything, is protecting your elbow knee space, right? Or protecting your I think he called your elbow hip space. So that would be our concept. So which one is more important to have? I'll give you both arguments. The argument of technique is this: you need specific techniques for specific situations. If somebody puts me in spider guard, my guard pass to De La Riva is not going to work. So just teaching conceptually may put me at a disadvantage because the concepts are different, the thoughts are different. That's why I need to be specific and have a specific answer for all these different things. The other side of the coin, the conceptual side of the coin says this. If I can teach you very broad concepts that work throughout jiu-jitsu or work throughout multiple positions, you will be able to discover the techniques on your own. And they become less specific. You have less thought process when you're thinking about defense as elbows in. So I will say this. I have belonged to both arguments at some point or another. When I first came up and I was a purple belt and I didn't have a school yet, I was not teaching. I didn't really teach much at all until I had my own school. When that happened, I was very, very specific. Each movement has a very specific, or each move, each position, each question that you pose to me has a very specific answer to it. So I need to answer that with a specific technique. Now, when I started teaching, I started noticing something. It is very hard to teach specific techniques to a room full of brand new people. And the reason is because if I teach a spider guard pass to a room full of brand new white belts, it really doesn't apply very well because the white belts don't know how to play spider guard. And it's not something that they have dealt with. Even if I start, as people would usually say, with the basics of closed guard, and I say, okay, these are the rules of closed guard. This is what you should do. These are the specific techniques to open and pass closed guard. Uh, their partners weren't playing very good closed guards. They were opening their legs really early, or they weren't threatening from the position. It was very hard to just be technical with my training. This is the move, go try it. Because the people that they were dealing with weren't giving the best energy when we would live train. So I started teaching things more conceptual. And so I started saying, okay, well, this is the general thought. This is a general idea of the position. Now you guys figure it out. And what would happen is they would figure it out. The problem with just that is they were spending so much time trying to figure out things that I could have just showed them in 30 seconds, trying to figure out grips that I could have just showed them quickly. And the whole goal, the whole point of this show, the whole point of simplifying jiu-jitsu is not to learn jiu-jitsu. It is to learn it in the most efficient and effective way possible. So now this is the point that I am at when it comes to technical training versus conceptual training. First, I would note everybody is different. Some people learn very, very well through technique. Some people learn very, very well through drilling, and others learn best through concepts. So, how do we try to get as many people learning well as possible? What I have found is focusing on why. So, for example, I will teach a technique and then I will highlight why that technique works. And then I will teach another technique and then I will highlight why that technique works. And on these, I will always try to find the same why, the same concept. So I'm showing specific techniques, but we will keep the same concept overall. It's too hard for most people to learn 50 different techniques from a position. Now, if I can give you one concept from that position and then three, four, five moves that apply to that concept, that work with that concept, you are not only going to be able to remember or have a better chance of remembering those techniques, you will definitely remember the concept. So even if you forget one or two of the techniques, you will have the general idea, the concept still down. For example, let me think of a good example of this. Maybe if we are playing, let's say we're playing side control and we're on top, and I teach you whoever controls the inside of the bottom person's elbow knee space. I would call it inside control. I'll name things differently. We call it elbow knee space, and inside control. I would look at. I always call it like opening their elbows. That's a version of elbow knee space. That's just the wording we use. So opening somebody's elbows from side control. If I tell you to finish them, you need to open their elbows. Okay. So I'm going to teach you a Americana straight arm lock Kimura. Some people call it the mousetrap. I'm going to teach you a mousetrap. And I highlight that the most important thing is getting their elbows away from their body, right? If I were to do a push up with my elbows close to my body versus I were to do a push up with my elbows completely flared away, I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to be able to push farther with my hands closer, right? But if my arms are very, very far away and I have to go really wide with my arms, and I'm thinking I'm going to push the person off of me like that, it's not going to work as well, right? My elbows are far away from my body. It puts me in a lot more danger. So I will teach first, before we work on the Americana straight arm lock Kimura, I will first teach using my legs to trap the person's arm, the bottom person's arm. I'm going to trap their arm and bring it far away from their body. That is the concept, getting their elbows away. So then when I show the Americana, when I show the Kimura, when I show the straight arm lock, they know that if the opposite arm is tight to the body, none of the arm locks are going to work. Okay. So that is the concept. Then they can start to apply one day. Maybe they start to go to the Kimura, and the person grabs their belt and they're not letting them get it. So my student now maybe will start to one day, hopefully, be able to say, well, maybe since I can't open the elbow here, it makes more sense for me, because the overall concept is opening that elbow before we can attack the arm. Makes more sense for me to pull them up on their side and then start to go for the arm bar, because that's maybe a stronger position to pull their elbow from their body. Okay. So using that, I show you Americana straight arm lock Kimura, but then you can add the arm bar yourself. You have 3 techniques that work, but knowing the big concept helps with problem solving so much. Maybe the technique's not working at all. And you can go back and say, well, why is this technique not working? Well, it's because the elbows weren't open. It's because their elbows were tight. And so using that, so we're using technique and then showing how the concept applies to the technique is what I have found to be the best way to train, the best way to learn. Now, a few caveats with that. First off, if there is a super secret, highly important concept, only make sure that you highlight the super secret, highly important concept. People can get about 1 highlight per anything. Okay. You may remember 2 important things when you're teaching a jiu-jitsu class, but really 1 is what you're going to look at. If I give you 5 things that are the most important, you're not going to know which one actually is the most important. You're not going to know how to apply these 5 things. Secondly, well, what if you're a student? What if your teacher doesn't show this way? He just shows technique. Well, now it is your job in each of these situations to answer the question, why does this move work? Why does this series work? Okay. You answer that question. The earlier you answer that when trying to learn a new move or master a new move, the better you will get, because when it stops working, when you miss it, you can always go back to, hey, what was the reason that this move worked anyway? um the guillotine, the move works because we can put pressure on their neck, we can fold their neck, right? If you guys saw I have a YouTube video on finishing the guillotine. It's great, you guys will love it, you should check it out. And from that position, I talk about folding the neck, how important it is to fold the neck, right? That is the concept of this guillotine. So when you don't finish the guillotine, when you waste a ton of energy squeezing, what you can ask yourself is, was I folding the neck? And if the answer is no, you could say, how could I fold the neck better next time? And so, or while you're even in the position, you can say, am I folding the neck? How can I fold the neck better? When you have that one detail, that one why the move works, you can apply it really well and answer questions and fix things, whether in the middle of a round or right after a round, versus having to go to your coach and say, hey, this didn't work. Why didn't it work? Being able to answer why is how we combine technique and concept. That is how we get better at jiu-jitsu, because it isn't just technique. Don't get me wrong. Some people just learn really well when it's only technique. Some people, I wouldn't say they learn as well when it's conceptual. What happens is, uh, when you teach conceptually to somebody who's very creative, it allows them to not have constraint and to just say, okay, this is the rule that applies, and then they can be creative. Okay. But those are going to be somebody who's a little more logical, probably learns better through just technique. But when you combine them both, it applies to everyone. It makes it much easier and allows problem solving to take place in the middle of rounds or right after rounds. And it allows you to problem solving get better. So that is my opinion on technique versus concept. And I think, it gives you something to apply, just answering why this move works. Whenever you're learning anything, why does this work? Sometimes your coach will even say it while he's teaching, but you don't think about it. You don't think about, oh, coach said that this was important. When she says that something is important, be sure to make note of that. Say, okay, that's the why. That's why this works. If you're teaching, I think that's something super important, is focus on the why. Focus on why the technique works, not just the 100 details that you can give. Focus on why it works. And then people can always answer why it didn't work. It makes it very easy to problem solve. It makes it easy for them to be able to apply. So that is my rant for today, my episode for today for you guys. I have another really cool interview coming up next for you guys next week. I think a lot of people really liked Chris Payne's because maybe somebody that isn't as known, you don't hear the name and go, oh yeah, I know that guy. But he offered something very unique and specific. And I think that that is going to be more of the target from here on out, and has been the target lately for our show. I think a lot of people, when it comes to interviews on a podcast, look for what's the biggest name. If the biggest name shares my episode on on his Instagram or his Facebook or whatever, then so many people are just going to gravitate towards my podcast. And that's just how a lot of people look at it. I don't uh because sometimes the biggest names do have some of the most interesting things to offer. But a lot of times the biggest names are just the biggest names. And uh, that's not the goal of the show. And I get way more response when I interview somebody that maybe is less known, but gives a really unique and specific answer. And like, that's going to be my next guest. My next guest is I won't give too much away, but I'll say this. My next guest is going to teach us how to breathe. And that will be really fun. And this isn't somebody who's this huge name person. This is somebody who's going to offer a unique perspective. And that is what I really want to bring to the podcast. But if that is what I'm going to bring to the podcast, if that is what you guys enjoy, because it really seems like it is, I need help from you guys. I need you guys sharing episodes of this podcast, because I'm not chasing big names. That's how a lot of people build podcasts, to be bigger. It's not what I'm going to do, though. I would much rather this podcast be what the people that listen now enjoy, but I need help from you guys. I need you guys to share. I need you guys to tell the people that you train with, hey, this podcast, the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, it doesn't suck that bad. The guy's mustache is horrible, but hopefully he'll shave that soon. I need you guys to do that for me. Okay, so that's my challenge to you guys. That isn't just answering the why. It is sharing this podcast if you enjoy it. If you hate the podcast, if you hate me, don't share the podcast. I guess if you really wanted to, if you hate me still and you still want to share the podcast, that doesn't bother me. But it doesn't make a lot of sense either. Why are you listening this far into the episode if you hate the podcast? Regardless, I hope that this episode can be helpful for you guys. I hope that you guys have a great weekend and you're gearing up, getting ready for winter, getting ready for the Christmas season, which in my opinion has already started. It started on November 1st. Maybe some people it's after Thanksgiving, whatever. You guys can be Grinches, that's fine. But I hope you guys suck just a little bit less at Jiu-Jitsu.